Do you work for a boss that has your back, or do you not? Let's talk about that.
Our personal commitment to being a highly effective and successful communicator should never stop. We have sole responsibility for the words we choose and the approach we take. Join me as we discuss various topics that can help us be outstanding communicators.
Okay, sometimes, the relationship with bosses can be difficult. Sometimes it's the boss's fault. Sometimes it's our own fault. More often than not, it's just a lack of communication. But I know for me personally, I've always struggled when I've reported to someone who I felt did not have my back. Perhaps they gave me a new project with very little direction, and no matter how hard I worked at getting more direction, it just wasn't given. Or perhaps they were incredibly distracted and they were juggling way too many plates and not extremely involved in just assisting and clarifying and communicating. But when I would make what was perceived as a mistake with the task that I was given, they just basically sailed me down the river, and it felt awful. So that had to happen a couple times in my career before I figured out, okay, hold up. What control do I have in this situation? Because I don't control my boss, and I never will control my boss. But I do control my approach and my words. So if it happened again, I decided to get in front of it as early as possible, and I would have a one-on-one meeting. I would be given the task at hand, and I would just say, okay, I've got some questions for you. And I would ask for clarification. And then my last question would be, I know this is going to sound weird, but do you have my back on this project? Because I'm going to work extremely hard. I will check in with you. I will give you updates. But if the outcome is different than what the expectation is, I just want to know that you have my back. The very first time I did it, I can tell you that my boss looked at me like I had four heads. They were shocked at the question. And then she took a deep breath and she said, that's a great question. And yes, I absolutely have your back. But you owe me consistent updates in order to do that. And it went great. The second time I did it with a different boss, it also worked really well. And frankly, every time I've had that conversation proactively and upfront, it has turned out well. Even if the project did have a different outcome than what the majority of leaders were expecting, I was supported by my boss. Now, what I haven't told you is that several of those bosses had a reputation of not being supportive, but that's not what I experienced. And frankly, I don't know if that reputation was true or not, or if it was a lack of communication from the other party in previous situations. But I know the communication up front and the level of professionalism and respect that I displayed when asking the question, it ended up being a really good outcome. And if I can have that conversation, you can too. You cannot control your boss. You can't control whether they have your back or not. You can't control their approach or their words, but you can control yours. But if you don't ask those questions up front, then you really don't have a leg to stand on in being extremely frustrated with your boss down the road. So ask the question. Do it respectfully. Do it professionally. But just get aligned with the expectations and ask, will you have my back? If your boss excels in leadership, They're going to either ask you more questions about what that looks like, or they're just going to say, "Of course I will." And they will go along that project with you. But you've got to ask the question. Now, on a side note, you cannot expect a boss to support you and have your back if you aren't stepping up to get the job done. You've got to get the job done. If a boss is a good boss and a strong leader, and you do not work really hard, you cannot expect them to support your lack of hard work. So don't get those two things confused. But I'm not speaking about that situation. I truly am focused on working for someone that perhaps you're concerned may not have your back and asking them up front if they will. It could be an excellent outcome for you. I know you can do this. You've got it.